everybody. Welcome to this episode of Think Business. Looking forward to having Attorney Mariel Newhouse on the show, an attorney who focuses her practice on helping employers prevent and resolve costly and disruptive employment law claims. I'm looking forward to this talk, so I appreciate you being on. I think as we are starting 2025, employment law is one of those things that sometimes people think about and sometimes they forget about. And we need people to kind of raise our awareness, and especially people who are experts in the field do that. So welcome to the show, Mariel. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
So let's kind of dive in. I think awareness is really important when it comes to taking time to sit back and observe and reflect on the business. And so let's kind of start small and talk about some of maybe three of the key areas that we want to make sure employers are thinking about today. If we were to highlight those three before we go into kind of detail on any of them, but what would those three things be that they should be thinking about?
Sure. So on a broad level, you want to be thinking about your state's paid sick leave laws. Obviously, we're located in Michigan. So for me, a big focus has been the changes to the Michigan Earned Sick Time Act. Another broad area that we're seeing some potential changes, both at the state level and possibly at the federal level, would be those independent contractor classification tests and what courts and agencies are going to be looking for moving forward when you classify your workers. And then finally, this one's been around for over a year now, but we're getting new guidance on how the Equal Employment Opportunity is going to enforce it. And that would be the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act and how it interrelates with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Okay. All right, good. All right. Well, thank you for that. I want to dive into each of those if that works for you.
Sure.
Michigan's Earned Sick Time Act. I think as a business coach, I talk to a lot of people who are always asking me questions about, sick time, PTO, time off, that all seems to kind of fall within the same bucket to a lot of employers, for sure to a lot of employees as far as how they utilize that time. And so what do we need to be paying attention to as employers today when it comes to this and everything that surrounds it?
So the first is paying attention to those compliance deadlines. For Michigan, the new Michigan Earned Sick Time Act, as of right now, barring some sort of legislative change in the next 2 weeks, which never say never, February 21st, 2025, there's going to be what is essentially a complete overhaul of what your existing leave policy probably looks like. And the biggest change is that this law applies to all employees. So I don't care if your employee works 2 hours a week, if they're seasonal, if they're temporary, they now are entitled to a certain amount of paid sick leave, I should say. And that's going to be a big change for a lot of employers. You may not be expecting it, or you might think, oh, that doesn't apply to me. Surely not. I can tell you it most likely does. And so you should absolutely be aware that this change is coming, like it or not. And we're here for you.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times, and I'm getting this wrong, you would know better than I would, but it's kind of like, there's some of those laws where if you work less than 40 hours or if you're part-time or less than part-time, and we're going to get into next about being independent contractors, but just kind of, moving ahead a little bit and bringing some of that into this conversation. How are there any blurred lines with independent contractors?
So that's a good question. Right now, the way the statute is written, it's not so clear. The statute obviously only uses the word employee. And then the state has issued frequently asked questions. This issue does come up quite a bit as we're kind of helping employers figure out how to navigate this. And the frequently asked questions say, this act applies to employees, and Michigan uses the economic realities test to figure out if an individual is an employee. So the quick answer is, well, if you're properly classified as an independent contractor in Michigan, then no, this earned sick time wouldn't apply to you. It's possible that we'll get more guidance or clarification. The previous version of Michigan's Sick Leave Act had a carve out for employees. It was essentially if your employer withholds taxes from your payroll, then the act applies to you. And so hopefully we'll get more clear-cut guidance for that. But essentially, no, if your workers are properly classified as independent contractors, this act doesn't apply to you. Whether or not you're properly classifying is an entirely different conversation.
Yeah. All right, good. All right, that's good to know. And another reason, think community, you need an attorney, right? Because it's like you can get, everybody, most people in their companies are doing what they love to do. They're in their sweet spot, but everybody can get tripped up on words. So you need somebody like an attorney to help you define what that means. Absolutely. Just quickly going back to kind of the Michigan's Earned Sick Time Act. So talk about that a little bit more, because I think that would be eye-opening or raise some awareness to some people who have not been thinking like that for the 2 hour a week or the 1 hour a month person.
Right. So the very basic requirements under the act are all employees are entitled to earn 1 hour of sick leave for every 30 hours worked. Now, I don't say paid sick leave, because if you have fewer than 10 employees, then you're only obligated to provide 40 hours of that 72 paid, and then the additional 32 would be unpaid. Most employers are going to have more than 10 or more employees, and so they would have to offer the full 72 hours paid. Now, I'll caveat this with it's an accrual-based statute. So while you can front load, if you do have employees who are really only working, 1 or 2 hours a week, let's say they're working 10 hours a week, let's keep it simple. That employee may not earn the full 72 hours over the course of the 12 months of the benefit year. And that's fine. You don't have to give the full 72 hours. You only have to give what the employee is accruing. So in 3 weeks, that employee is only going to accrue, 1 hour of sick leave. 52 Gotcha. Weeks later, that's not going to be the full 72 hours.
Yeah. All right, good. That's a great breakdown. All right, so let's talk about independent contractor classifications, because I think we're going to be seeing a lot more independent contractors. We're going to be seeing a lot more entrepreneurs. We're going to be seeing a lot more people doing independent contractor work. And so what do, entrepreneurs who are independent contractors consulting in that way with companies on any level, what do we need to know? And then companies who run a business. I used to work for a company where everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but 80% of the people were independent contractors that actually worked for the company. So what do employers and what do individuals need to know about that?
So I can tell you from an employer standpoint, and I'm going to use the word employer loosely here, because if your goal is to be an independent contractor or to have independent contractors, you want to be very cognizant of the language that you're using and not use any sort of words that would maybe imply this employment relationship. Right. But if you are an employer and you're looking at your worker base, it may be in the future that classifying your workers as independent contractors is going to get a lot harder. And if you're an independent contractor or somebody who engages in our gig economy, which is huge.
And getting bigger. Yeah.
Getting bigger every day, which as an aside is kind of an interesting juxtaposition. It's getting harder to be classified as an independent contractor in a time where individuals might want to be independent contractors. It might make the most sense for them. So from an individual standpoint, if you are an independent contractor, one of the biggest things that we see that tends to be a plus in your yes, I'm an independent contractor column is setting up your own LLC or your own corporation, whatever makes the most sense for you. It's doing work not necessarily under your individual name and your social security number, but creating a business it can just be you, but you've got a federal identification number. And it just signifies to whatever agency that might be looking into your classification that, no, you are your own business and you can take your business and you can go to business A to provide services while at the same time going to business B and business C and providing the same services. It's a good indication that you are truly independent and not just working for this one entity.
Yeah, great.
The flip side, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, flip side.
The flip side, as an employer, it may make sense to start maybe not requiring, but looking for those workers who do have those businesses, because for you, it's another box that you can check and say, well, I didn't engage this individual, I engaged this business to perform this service.
I love it. That's a great review. That's a great review. Think community. It's so important that we pay attention to these small things, because if we don't pay attention now, then when we have to pay attention, then there's a lot of cleanup work we got to do. All right, so let's talk about. So we've talked about the Michigan's Earned Sick Time Act. We've talked about independent contractor classifications. The third thing you mentioned was the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. Tell us about that and what employers need to be aware about.
So this act actually became effective in June of 2023. And then in recent months, maybe it's probably about a year ago now, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, issued additional guidance. We've got a new rule on how this is going to work. And the biggest thing that employers should be aware of is this is not the Americans with Disabilities Act that you know and love. I think when this act, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, first came out, there was this idea that, okay, we're just expanding the protections under the ADA. It'll be a similar analysis. We got this. We understand what we need to do here. And what we're seeing as this guidance comes out, it's really ADA plus. There's this push to not stop employers from asking for additional information, but really pause and say, do you really need further medical information, or do you already know that the employee is pregnant and the accommodation that they're seeking is so reasonable or is so unlikely to cause an impact on your company that you should just grant it without causing a problem or without giving pushback? And so the guidance that was issued actually gave 4 examples, but the clearest one that I like to give employers is, if you require uniforms and an employee comes to you and you know they're pregnant and they say, listen, I need a bigger uniform, that's not going to cause a hardship on your business. Give the additional uniform. You shouldn't necessarily be seeking medical documentation. And that's something that the Department of Labor and the EEOC, they're going to be looking for whether or not it was reasonable for you to seek medical certification. So I think the biggest thing, we all in the employment world have kind of been trained, okay, somebody came to me with an request for a reasonable accommodation under the ADA. The first thing I'm going to do is say, I want medical certification. And now with the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, if it's a reasonable accommodation related to pregnancy, childbirth, or other related medical condition, put on the brakes a little bit and stop. And it's a slightly different analysis.
It's great. This has been great. I'm learning a ton. This is great. This is great. This is great. All right. So we talked about 3 of the 3 of key things for employment law in 2025. People should be aware of. Think community. If you're not in the know, or some of this sounds new to you, or it needs anything, reach out to your attorney, reach out to Mariel, reach out to somebody who can guide you with that. Okay, let's talk about you for a second. I always love learning, a little bit about all my guests, and you can tell by how you articulated everything. You are, top of your game, and so in the know. It was so impressive. I loved listening to it all and learning. What if you could look back at a mentor or somebody that planted a seed a while ago that helped you make the decision to be an attorney today, who is that, or what was that guidance?
Gosh, so I do have quite a few attorneys in my family, and I think growing up it was always, that is a potential path for you. And then I had a close family member experience something that required a lot of attorney work without giving details. And I just remember thinking, wow, I want to help. And this seems like the path that will help people. And of course, you're young, you're idealist, you're like, I can save the world. But it really, it stuck in my brain. And then, I did college, got through it, whatever. And I'm starting law school. And I remember telling my parents, what if I hate it? This is the thing that I always just said, okay, I'm going to do it. And what if I hate it? And I got there, and first week it was like, no, I love it. This is amazing. This is exactly where I need to be. So it really was almost a life experience that put the kernel in my head, and then just reaffirmed by everything that I've experienced in law school plus since then.
It's great. I love that story because, when I was 18 years old, my dad gave me a set of tape sets by Brian Tracy, The Psychology of Success. And I thought at 18, I want to do this. I want to write books. I want to be a business coach. I want to grow companies. And I mean, at 18, I had worked at the local yogurt shop and, camp. And so, but I always knew it's like sometimes you just like something resonates so deeply, and then you're not sure. And it wasn't until my early 40s that I actually started my business coaching. And so, so it's great. That's a great story. But think community, pay attention to those things that resonate deeply, that lead you to your path of fulfillment. What does fulfillment mean to you?
To me?
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's a little bit of that old saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. It's not that easy. Obviously, not every day is amazing and wonderful, but I think fulfillment is getting to the end of the day and feeling like, wow, I did good work today. I'm proud of what I did. And even if it wasn't the most amazing day, I made a difference, or I did something that I found really interesting, or I learned something new.
Yeah, I feel the same way. All right, quick speed round. You ready?
Okay, I don't know.
All right. A book, an article, or a TED Talk that's had a big impact on you?
Oh, I don't know if I can think of a specific book, but I got to pass on that one. You put me on the spot. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Well, how about like a TED Talk or an article or something you've ever read or a quote?
Well, okay. So I did watch a TED Talk on domestic violence, which I know is really dark, but it was one of the areas that first grabbed me when I started the law. And even though that's not an area of law that I practice in, it is something that I think about pretty frequently, because I think it's a matter of really listening to, domestic violence situations are obviously very intense. And so I think about it when I'm meeting with a client who has a really intense employment problem, and it's just, I want to know all sides of the story, and I really want to hear the truths of what's happening, so that, not so I can pass judgment or decide who's right and wrong, but just so I can have the information and feel for the client and what they're going through. I think that's really important.
That's good. Good. I appreciate that. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Similar to fulfillment, you may not love every day at your job, but if you like the people you work with and you find the work tolerable, it's a really good place to be.
Yeah, I agree. Finish this sentence. One thing every business owner, every employer needs to know and be more aware of is?
If you have employees in a different state because of remote work, you should know what those employment laws are.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's another show. You'll have to come on and talk more about employment law. This was great, Mariel. Tell everybody where they can connect with you and who your ideal clients are.
Sure. So you can connect with me. All of my information is on the Maddenhauser website. I love working with employers before the problems arise. I like to be a problem solver proactively. I do a lot of my practice is putting together employee handbooks, putting together policies that comply with the laws. But, I'll take your problems even post fact. I love to do EEOC investigations and get those position statements out. I find that work to be really fulfilling as well. So
it was great. Well, Mariel, you brought great content today to raise awareness for people thinking about their businesses that think about their businesses on a regular basis, but maybe missing a little bit of some of the nuanced things that they need to be thinking about. So I appreciate you bringing that to the surface. I think community, some of the highlights of today are about, making sure that you're taking time to reflect, to make sure you're doing the things and paying attention to the things that you need to, being proactive, being preventative, and getting in front of things. And so it's really important that you talk to your advisors, your attorneys. If you want to reach out to Mariel, she can, as she's shown today, guide you in a great direction. Thanks so much. Again, this was great. Tell them your website and cell phone if you want to.
Sure. So you can go to maddenhauser.com and find me, Mariel Newhouse. And then best number to reach me, because it will also ring my cell phone, is 248-351-7076.
That's great. This was great. I appreciate all your time. Appreciate your insights. Then community, if you need me and want to talk about coaching, you can reach me at johndwoskin.com. Thanks so much. This was awesome.
Thank you, John.